people making this. You will notice that if you sort of recount the happiest moments in your life, whether as a child or as an adult or later, it's basically because when you felt the part of a team, part of doing something, part of a small play or skit or part of a small race, part of a small event that you did for charity, and that is happiness. And that is what we try to deliver. So my HR guy, I'm talking to him every month and saying, how are we going to make our employees happy this month? And of course, initially he was very bugged about this question, but he's beginning to understand that now. And so all the time when we're sitting in a meeting, we're saying, if we are talking about workers and some new rule or notice that needs to come up, and this is again an Indian thing I would claim, because I don't know if Gandhiji, Mahatma Gandhi said that if you want to take a big decision, put the face of the poorest person that this decision is going to affect in front of you. And then ask yourself, if this decision is going to make a positive impact, is it going to make him smile or not? Sounds like a big thing, but it's very simple. If I'm making decisions about workers or their wages or their living conditions, ignoring them, not thinking about them and thinking about profits, I'm going to take the wrong decision. If I'm going to think about the quality of a capacitor, whether it should be acceptable or not, a certain standard, a machine should be scrapped or not, without thinking if the customer is going to get that capacitor, I am making the wrong decision. Very simple. And this training you can, today we have an operation that even I am tempted to make mistakes sometimes, and one of my colleagues will point out and say, no, you're forgetting, the principle that you laid. And that puts us back on track. So that is why I am so confident saying that we will grow at 30% even if I'm not there. Because I believe happy teams are unbeatable. We are seeing that happening. Some of you who are into cricket. The Indian team was in a miserable condition 4 or 5 years ago. And today we seem to be the champions of the world in all 3 formats of the game. And I think the reason is that those people look really happy when they're playing that game. They're not under pressure. The earlier coach, just a little bit of a detail. The earlier coach said, you are a great batsman, but you're a lousy bowler and you're a lousy fielder. Now don't keep wasting your life working on your strength. If you want to retain that place, there are 11 guys waiting for you. Don't retain a place, become a good fielder overnight. So you put a lot of pressure on people. There was some performance for some time, then it began to decline. The next guy who came will change the game. You're a great batsman. Enjoy your game. Play like there is no tomorrow. Be happy to go to you. Somebody else is a great fielder, he will do that, don't worry. We don't have the right system people. If you don't perform in one game, you won't be kicked out. We are here as a team. And the captain began to stand for it. He said, no, this guy didn't play well, but I will stand for it. And he had a chat with him. And we've had some amazing results in the last 4 years. I think they are a happy team and they are unbeatable in form. Don't end it there because after all, this is all about money. All this hot air will disappear if we don't share that money in a fair way. And what is my way of sharing it? The government is always a shareholder whether you like it or not in any part of the world. I don't like it, but I'd like to share it with them in the legal way possible because it's not worth putting myself in jail to save a little money. So 35% of what I make will go to the government in this country as pre-tax profit. Fair enough. I have only a right to 65%. Of what I get, I have promised my shareholders 20% of their equity every year. Fortunately, in this case, this is a little bit of a detail. We put equity only once in this company. And today, my net profit every year is close to 7 to 8 times that equity. Of course, if you look at the reserves and surplus, that's a lot. But the equity they put in, so my talk to them is that every year I plan to return to you twice the amount of money you put in 20 years ago. And that fortunately is about, at the moment, it's about 20% of my profit, of post-tax profit, and that is given to all the shareholders, so that they have less reasons to complain. 20% of post-tax profit goes back to the employees. An equal amount that goes to the shareholders goes to these 500 employees. At the moment, we distribute about 8%, 12% is going into a reserve. Because as we get confidence in the system, more and more employees will be brought into this chain. So people who work with us for 5 years will become a part of it and begin to get a direct percentage of the profit. At the junior most level, it might be very little, it might be I think 0.05%, so on and so forth, and I get 2.5% as the CEO of the company. Very transparent, very open. If I have a bad year, I give up my 2.5%. So that's the first one that should go. Not the 0.05% that a cleaning boy gets. So that they understand. And this makes them look at the profit and loss statement. For several years, I did not share the profit with them because there was not enough to share. So now that there is enough to share, you look at the statement, calculate your own wages, you still have a problem, come and talk. I'll put you in my car as a driver, go to similar looking factories, ask them what they get. Sure. If somebody else gets more, I mean, I don't mean anybody, but on the average, if you're doing worse, then it's time for us to move on and give you more money. So we have an employee satisfaction survey done every 6 months, exactly like a customer satisfaction survey. 12 questions. And I think the 9th question is the amount of salary and bonuses you get enough? Is good, is in line with your qualifications and work, etc. In the company, we have 80% as a pass mark. So if I conduct a training program, we have a lot of training programs, or my IT guy conducts how to use Excel, for example. If I attend that, I have to give an exam at the end of it. If I get less than 80% marks, it's put up on the notice. The MD failed the exam, he has to do it again. So when I did this, and in this ninth question of salary, for years I got less than 80%. And a lot of people advise me, my HR manager included, that let's drop this question. Because every time I fail, I have to go to that assembly. And I have to explain to them what I plan to do here, so that hopefully I will not fail again. Which is this. Now for the last, I think, 6 years, I get more than 80% marks on that question also. It's not that we give the best salary in the thing, but we have explained the situation to them. They are a part of the problem and they are a part of the solution. And then 60% of the post-tax profit is retained in the company for our future growth, for our expansion, for acquiring that Chinese company, etc. Vendors, I promise them that we will, if they meet with all the things, so they are a part of our stakeholder team also. We have a transparent mechanism. This is what I get from X, this is what I get from Y. You get 20% or 30% of the share. You can go to 50%, you need to be more competitive. You can go to 80%, you need to prove yourself on these accounts. But what we promise you is to stay with us. Hopefully 30% additional business will be yours in the next year. Because we evolve to grow by 30% every year. So it carries everybody together. Okay, customers, they will continue to get better quality from me, and that we have delivered cost, of course, better delivery, and most important, innovation. 30% of all our turnover should come every year from new products, which means capacitors that were designed in the last 3 years. So which means that a lot of innovation, a lot of suggestions. We have a very nice suggestion scheme. Every week, you have to write down a suggestion on a very simple format and give it to your supervisor. You do it on a Friday. On Saturday, a committee of workers, largely workers, but also for the executives meet, and they decide if it's an acceptable or an unacceptable suggestion. We are averaging at the moment, I think, about 500 suggestions, 500 to 600 suggestions every month. So you can imagine in the last 10 years the number of suggestions that have come. And they could be anything. They could be putting a new board, putting a new die, placing the die in a certain way, cleaning the place in such a way, etc., etc. So the whole idea is, again, direction. When the worker comes to work, if you don't have things like this, the supervisor talks to his worker only when he underperforms. In any job that you know, the natural way of communicating is, I will communicate with my subordinate when he has not performed. Quality is not right, the quantity is not right, the costs are not okay. I'll say, hey, what is going on? I'm getting hauled up by my boss, give some explanations. We decided to change the direction of that thing. How do I make him talk to him in a positive light? So that once he'll come and he says, excuse me, but there are no suggestions in the last 1 week. But you had that problem. I think you can convert that into a suggestion. So executives are not allowed to give suggestions in this time. Their suggestions and their innovative thought is transferred to the workers. On Saturday morning, everybody gets $50 for per suggestion except that means $1. So you can earn $10, $15 a week purely on this. And there are workers in the company that are getting more than their salary purely based on suggestions. There was a guy 2 Diwalis ago when we have this Festival of Light. We have a big annual function with everybody. And we have a special scheme for highest number of suggestions. There's a guy who gave about 165 suggestions in 1 week. I don't care what they are, but somebody has put his mind and his heart and his soul to thinking about how things can improve in his workplace. And that's what matters. So the direction is positive. The speed will follow. Or we could reverse it, and all supervisors will be said, why are people not performing well, and they will keep firing them, and they will fire their subordinates. And I don't think we'll get too far. On environment, again, we are an ISO 14000 company. We have enhanced targets of scrap, reducing scrap. We cost the capacitor in terms of the electricity or cents per piece used in the last 10 years. And though the electricity has gone up by 3 times in this country, the cost of electricity, our cost per piece has come down, etc., etc. So there are several of these examples. We do a lot of Six Sigma projects with people. The tools and techniques are followed. They were not the first ones. So first we talked to them at a very fair level, made them a part of the whole situation, and then started following it up with fancier and fancier tools. And now we are doing about 66 projects this year, and 2 teams won some national level award in that for the first time. The idea is that also other businesses are my stakeholders, and I try to spend a lot of time with business associations, trying to talk about the policy and the environment and how we can improve that, showcasing examples from the industry. And finally, a lot of CSR, including, and that's a good one, in India, the politics is changing. And that's something that we've seen in the last 1 year. Somebody like me who's I think, a chronic optimist, if I may call myself that, was also beginning to get cynical because there was a lot of corruption. Having said all this, I have one stakeholder which is government that comes under the table. Every single approval is still paid right. To me, it's not just the cost of that right, it's demeaning. Somebody of my caliber and competence, why do I have to do something which is illegal, which is unethical? Not because I like to do it, but because that seems to be the law of the land, the unwritten law of the land. And we are very glad that here as a company we're beginning to do something small. We host a website, National Network for India, where like-minded people who retired, who are trying to help us, help the country. So when there is election held in a certain area, we put up the candidate's criminal record. We put up an IT record, so that at least voters can see it. They're a little more knowledgeable about who this guy is and vote with a little conscience. And just yesterday, day before, we had results of some elections in state. We're beginning to see that people are beginning to ask questions. We are beginning to hold our politicians a little more accountable. And to my older colleagues who become very cynical about this, I try and remind them that we are a very young democracy, only 60 years, of which we are really a democracy only for 20 years. Because people like me did not go and vote out 20 years ago. Some of us are not of voting age, and a lot of them who are of voting age were too cynical to vote. So it was the rural people who were voting across caste lines, across religions, across whatever, wrong mispropaganda or whatever was being put out, or for voting for a bottle of whiskey or some money being slashed to them. And that's changing in this country. If you're looking at doing business in India, I don't think there is a better period to come to business. I talked about the environment. The largest demand for any item is today in this country. Cell phones, we are doing more cell phones per month than China is. The number of selections. Because people, I don't know how many have read a book called White Tiger, or look it up in the net, a story of this guy talking about why we are considered entrepreneurs in this country. Not in a positive way, in a very cynical, negative way. I hated the book because of what it said about the country, but it's real. In part, it's still real. So we have to look at the mirror, every morning and say, where are we going, where are we headed? And the good news is I think we are headed in the right direction. A lot of positive change, a lot of us able to ask the government questions, civil society is getting stronger. A lot of anti-corruption, you may have heard of the recent Anna Hazare thing. I think it's worth if somebody tells you about that. It's really a huge phenomenon. Something like our Tahrir Square happened just a month ago in this country. And it's just the beginning. We are asking for an anti-corruption law, which for 42 years has been languishing in the parliament. The government says one way or the other doesn't want to do it. Now one man decided to go on a hunger fast, truly Gandhian style. In 5 days the government was down on their knees and they had to accept the demand of making a panel with him and 4 other civil service society guys in that panel. Okay, a lot of us still cynical saying, we'll see what happens in the panel. But this is a big change. So this is a country that has huge demand, people who are educated, who are demanding the best. I'll give you another example from my business. We started diversifying a few years ago and we made one product called a footfall counter. It's a very simple product that counts the number of people that come into any entrance. So Adidas bought 50 of them. Bata bought some 100. Nike bought a few. And what it does is it counts the number of people that are coming in every minute, and through a GPS model like a cell phone transmits this information to a server, a central server in my office. We have a call center that looks at it, and this presents data to you in analytical format. So Adidas head office guy can look at this and do comparison of stores in the north and south of India, can see what is happening over weekends, these are the weekdays, what are his peak hours, what are his slack hours, what happens when he does an advertising campaign, do more footfalls results. Because at the moment, footfalls are not reported directly by anybody. Because the store guy, either the store manager or the franchisee, has no interest in reporting the direct data to the head office. They are at a conflicting purpose. So if I'm a store manager, I try to prove to you that my conversion is almost 100%. Everybody who walked in bought a shoe. That's what I would like to report. The truth is, maybe as less than 10%. So we decided to get into a scheme of things like this, and that's doing very well over the last 2.5 years. Why is it a great example? Because it was done here because we saw a demand. It's a great example because that customer pays the lowest possible in the world is the Indian customer. The highest number of questions you can be asked are asked here because the guy is technically very, very savvy. He understands what's going on in the software world, he understands what's going on in the web space. He's an IT expert because somebody in that company knows IT much better than I do. And then there's a negotiator who by caste, they have caste, as you know. And there is a whole caste that only dealt with money all their life for the last 5,000 years. You can't have a better negotiator than that guy. So these guys have made a company like mine that started in that product line. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock I have a meeting with Bata, where Mr. Bata himself wants to understand how we can roll this out to the world. So that's the kind of opportunity that you have for what I call the Indian design, Indian made product. Demand is large, all centers cost me the cheapest, your software cost me the cheapest, hardware cost me one of the cheaper ones. And this whole, and that's the kind of opportunity that opens when you do business in India.